like a little candlelight, a shiny melody that pleases me. Hands on my spine, breath on my neck, oh it makes me weak. But you gotta know how to move me, how to shake me without a touch, how to fight me, how to call me into bloom. Now I have given you the rules, yeah, laid it out pretty straight. To my heart you could fly high, that's what we could be, you and me, baby, yeah, high, that's what we could be. You can buy me pretty things you pick just for me, I think that's sweet. Red carpet flair, the coat in the mud your mama taught you right. But if I wanna let all the icing off the last piece of cake, hell, you better let me go up those stairs without giving me a song. I'm sure you'll be lonely. I have given you the rules, yeah, laid it out pretty straight. To my heart you could fly high, that's what we could be,
Socialism failing to work as it always does, this time in Venezuela. You talk about giving everybody something free, and all of a sudden there's no food to eat. And who do you think is the richest person in Venezuela? The daughter of...
Wilmington. You're tuned into the Big Talker FM 106.7 here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Filling in for Joe for all 3 hours. I'm your guest host, Yaël Ossowski. It's great to get back on the mic here in Wilmington. If you've heard my voice before, it's because I've been on with Joe a couple of times over the last couple years. I'm normally on Fridays around 9:30. I'm shooting it all with Joe, trying to sum up the week's news. And then we also have a radio show on the weekend called Consumer Choice Radio. Consumer Choice Center is our organization. We've been pushing basically to have all the best pro-consumer, pro-innovation policies, both in the state of North Carolina, also in the federal level at the government there, and around the world. The global grassroots movement for consumer choice, and you've heard us here on the Big Talker on Consumer Choice Radio Saturdays at 10 a.m. Hopefully you'll tune in there too. We've got a great program with former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford, who will be on our program. So tune in. That is Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can also go to consumerchoiceradio.com. But here we're talking about today. It's a beautiful Thursday. It's the 22nd of October here in the morning in Wilmington. We're looking at a nice 81-degree day. Man, you don't get to say that in fall too often. 81 degrees, looking nice in Wilmington. Hopefully everyone here is doing okay. It's a pleasure to be on the station. It's a beautiful, beautiful day to be in Wilmington. Hopefully there's a lot of you who are having to drive into work, and maybe it's going to be a bit relaxed for you. Some of you might be at home, working at home, plugged into Zoom, like the rest of us, trying to figure out how do you do your day, but we're very happy that you were able to tune in. You can always go to our website, bigtalkerfm.com. There you can listen to the live stream. Also check out the Facebook, where there's actually shows that are broadcast live on that platform each and every week. We're trying to do that to you here at the Big Talker. Provide the best for all the listeners. So you're asking yourself, what is this guy going to talk about for the next 3 hours? Don't worry, I got plenty. I've picked up the phone, made sure it was red hot, and called in the best and the brightest that I could. We've got it mixed up. We've got hours dedicated to what's going on with politics and shutdowns. We've got culture, and we've got the economy, and much more in between. So some of the choice people, we've got NASCAR driver Matt DiBenedetto. He's a driver of the 21 Ford Mustang for Wood Brothers Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. Awesome guy, fan favorite, one of my favorite drivers. And, of course, NASCAR, North Carolina, it all makes us together. So that's going to be a great conversation. That'll be in hour 2. So if you're tuned in, we'll get that just after 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern. And apart from that, we've got some great other people here. We've got some locals, some North Carolina locals. We've got John Francis Trump of the Carolina Journal. He'll be in the next segment, filling us in on what's happening with our bars and our gyms in the state of North Carolina. Always some great reporting from John Francis Trump. Definitely follow him. We've talked to him a good amount. We've got Professor Mike Munger from Duke University. He is a jack of all trades, but he's actually running for State House here in the state of North Carolina, so we'll hear a little bit from him. And then the rest of this hour, we've got my buddy Fergus Hodgson, who's coming to us from Houston. He's a journalist, an economic and financial researcher, and gives us the lowdown on what's happening with the economic markets, what's happening with a lot of these lockdowns, and much more. So very happy to talk with Fergus here. Hour 2, as I mentioned, Matt DiBenedetto will be on the phone, amazing driver. And then we've got some travel bloggers and podcasters on after that. We have Travis and Heather Sherry. They're host of the Extra Pack of Peanuts podcast. If you're into travel podcasts and you like traveling, you've definitely heard some of their stuff. They're an amazingly fun couple, and they're coming to us from Wilmington. They'll actually be phoning in from their home near the beach, so some local flavor to the program. We've got Ryan Pitkin of the Queen City Nerve, which is a brand new alternative newspaper out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we're rounding out the hour with my colleague, Maria Chaplia. She's based in Ukraine, and she actually might have some information on some of this Biden story and a bit what's happened in the election. So great to talk to Maria. Then hour 3, we're jumping into it with some hot topics, folks. We got my friend Alan Holmes. He's down in Atlanta, host of the Why Pay podcast, where, you won't believe it, we're going to debate reparations for American descendants of slavery. Some great insight from Alan. He's really bringing some interesting ideas, something that's not really discussed too much on radio, but very fun. After that, we've got Brad Polumbo. He's from the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, one of the best working journalists out there, somebody who's got a very busy pen. He's writing a lot of great articles. We'll talk about the election. We'll talk about big tech and more. And then rounding it out with my good friend and colleague, David Clement, co-host at Consumer Choice Radio. Plenty of stuff for you guys this morning. Again, we're here on the Big Talker FM 106.7. We're broadcasting live out to the Carolinas, also to North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and all the best. Joe will be back next week. He's off parading in the mountains, enjoying all that time that he deserves to himself. But for the next 3 hours, you're with me. I'm Yaël Ossowski, your guest host for the next 3 hours here on the Big Talker 106.7. It's going to be a fun show, guys. I think we're going to have a really good time. This is what it's all about, everybody. It's radio. It's morning. We're happy to be with you. We'll be right back after this. First break, coming back with John Francis Trump.
I like a little candlelight, a shiny melody that pleases me. Hands on my spine, breath on my neck, going.
Welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski guest hosting for you this morning and for the entire 3-hour program. And I figured last time that I was on the air and I got to commandeer the mic, I had one of my good friends, one of the best journalists in the state of North Carolina, Mr. John Francis Trump, and I figured I'd get him on the phone again. So, John, how's it going this morning?
I'm great, Yael. How are you?
Hey, things are wonderful. We're kind of locked in on the dial. It's been a busy and strange couple of months, and many people have had their ire just risen to the next level, and you are one of them. I'll remind you that John Francis Trump is not just my friend and our guest here on the radio program, but also managing editor at the Carolina Journal and author of the book Still and Barrel. So last time, John, we talked a lot about journalism, we talked about alcohol reform, and since then, this nasty COVID monster has taken over our headlines. I will put some links in the show notes to some of your articles lately, but kind of tell us, what's it been like covering COVID in North Carolina and some of your back and forth with the governor?
Well, that's interesting that you ask about the back and forth, because the governor doesn't take our questions. He's taken one of our questions since March. So, and he doesn't, his office typically doesn't respond to emails from us or questions at all. So, I mean, we're, kind of left to our own devices, so to speak, on trying to figure out what's happening here. I know he talks a lot about science and data, and our researchers have written a lot about this too. It's cloudy science and data. We were driving just recently through West Virginia, and the governor there, and it's a smaller state and it's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing, but they broke it down to outbreaks in prisons, outbreaks in nursing home, even down to churches. And here we talk in a large umbrella of science and data and who's got it and who doesn't. I mean, where it is. It's not specific. The demographics aren't specific, and I think what my biggest frustration is, we're kind of left wondering, well, am I vulnerable? How vulnerable am I? Am I protecting my parents? Am I protecting my kids? And we've written about it. And my latest piece was that one of my colleagues, Kerry Travis, said that we've been talking about things being lost in this, the normal things, going out, that type of thing. But a lot of it has been taken from relationships, taken from just talking to people, taken from social interaction on a greenway, where people kind of just, somebody walked up a hill to get away from me the other day. I'm like, they'll see you coming and they'll put a mask on. And there's so many studies out there of, airborne, and does it live on surfaces, and you can't get it walking quickly by somebody. There's just so much. And I think, honestly, too, much of the media has been complicit in following this governor's message. Obviously, I could talk about this a lot, too, because if you watch, like, the World Series, not the World Series, but the playoff games, and even the football games in Texas, the stadiums are full. So apparently they're dealing with COVID one way, and it's become very political.
And for the governor, and we're talking about Governor Rory Cooper, I mean, this is a re-election year. How much do you think the election is sort of fresh on his mind when he's made COVID policy these past few months? Do you think that's something that's right at the front, or is he kind of being a good, administrative governor at the moment and not even thinking about politics, John?
I think in the beginning, when this began in March, I think we were kind of behind him, and we supported him. I think we felt like he had everybody's best interests at heart. But as it has gone on, he's flipped the script several times. When he lost to me, when I guess we were going to phase 1.5 or 2, where he closed gyms. He didn't reopen bars, then he didn't reopen gyms. And that kind of was like, hey, wait a minute. And I think that's when it's gotten a bit political. And if he would have stuck to the script the entire time, I think we'd have been okay. Okay, we understand what you're doing. But he keeps changing the rules, moving the goalposts, so to speak. And, and Dan Forest, of course, is a lieutenant governor who's running against Cooper this time, who has taken a whole different tack on it with no masks, and I don't think that's the way to go either. A lot of people I've heard, once November 4th hits, everything will be back to normal, and we'll go back to our lives, because it's been about politics. And this is a response to the Republicans and the way the president has handled it or not handled it.
Yeah.
So
there's always that state story. I remember driving through, I think it was just north of Charlotte, I think about a month and a half ago, and I just saw the big red billboard, Dan Forest will reopen North Carolina. That was it. That was the message.
Right. And, any reasonable thinking person will realize you just can't do that. But Fauci said on 60 Minutes that he alluded to the lockdowns, that they're a temporary. I think they were a temporary measure. Everybody get their stuff together, figure it out, figure their social distancing, figure the cleaning out, and then after that we move on and be responsible. And you and I think are along the same mindset about personal responsibility and living without intervention from government or government telling us what to do. And I think that's been taken away too. It's like, we're going to tell you what to do, and I think if the reasonable people would wear masks, they would social distance, they stay away from large groups, they stay away from people they may not know or close contact, and let us. But I think now it's almost a rebellion the other way. It's like, oh yeah, let's have these big rallies and let's breathe on everybody. Then you have the other set that go up the hill to avoid me. I had written about this too. There's 3 sets. There's the set that think it's a hoax and still don't believe in it. There's the set that run up the hill and run on the other side of the street to avoid you. And there's like people like us, I think, that we know it's there. We know it's a virus. It's going to be there, but we're taking every reasonable precaution that we're not giving any credit to live our lives and to let us live our lives. And you look at the businesses, the bars that are just devastated by this.
Oh, no doubt. I think, you've definitely written about that. There's been some great interviews that you've done with particular bar owners and even people at the gym. And, I think that brings up a good point is people are trying to take care of themselves, trying to stay healthy. Obviously, it's a lot easier in the summertime, but if people aren't able to go freely to the gym openly when it starts getting cold, what are you supposed to be doing for physical activity? For a lot of people, it's just not possible. They don't live out in the wilderness, can't go out in the, in the woods. They're stuck in apartments and all the rest. And I wonder, one thing I've heard from a lot of the House Democrats in North Carolina, the most I can follow many of what they say, is that, coronavirus has laid bare the inequities that exist in our system. And, that I think many people would agree with that, and there are a lot of statistics to point to that. But then again, the solution is never, therefore we must open businesses that are safe and responsible. It just seems as if there's not much, thinking or direction there. I don't know if you're picking up on the same thing there in Raleigh.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's really become political, and he and the Cooper and Dr. Cohen, they have their briefings and they lay it out. But like I say, the data is not specific, and they talk about certain populations that are more affected than other populations. And healthcare is a big thing. Healthcare has been on the table. Cooper wants to expand Medicaid. That's good. That would cost the state billions of dollars, and it really would in the long term. So yeah, it's become so politicized, and like you talk about about the gym and that type of deal, where we've talked about this, where the healthcare in this country, it's so focused on after you get sick, instead of the preventive side of it. You get sick and then they give you pills and they send you to the hospital instead of working on obesity. That's such a problem. Nutrition, that's such a problem. Diet and exercise and sleep is just so important. But that never really comes out, and that's not the message. And I guess what gets in our craw mostly is Cooper standing on high and dictating down to us and taking that away, and the closing the gyms part you brought up the point there. The statistics show if you're pre-existing conditions, I understand obesity is a big issue, but one way to prevent that is to go exercise and to go to the gym, but then you don't close gyms because of that. And it's become a political message. I think the Republicans, they follow what the White House is saying. The straight hardcore Republican, and the Democrats mostly they're on Cooper's coattails, and they're not going to let go of Cooper's coattails. So whatever that is, and that's what's so frustrating. John Sanders, who's done at the John Locke Foundation, has done a lot of research about testing, and some of the numbers that are just typical are very unclear here, and it's just a point of frustration.
If you want to read more of John's work, you can head on over to carolinajournal.com. Also, please do buy his book, a big favorite of mine, Still and Barrel, Craft Spirits in the Old North State. We'll link to that in all the show notes attached to this. Mr. John Francis Trump, thanks so much for coming on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci program, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Anytime, Yael.
All right, talk to you then. Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Great interview with John. We'll be right back here after this break. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Yaël Ossowski guest hosting for the day's program. And I'm very excited to have our next guest, Professor Michael Munger of Duke University. Professor Munger, thanks so much for coming on the program.
It is great to be back on the show. Thank you.
And of course, for many listeners of the Big Talker, they might be familiar with your voice. If they aren't, just to give you guys a little bit of the creds here, Professor Munger is professor of political science and director of the PP&E program at Duke University. He's the author of several books, including Tomorrow 3.0 and Is Capitalism Sustainable? And to top it all off, he's also a candidate for the North Carolina State House in District 34 as a libertarian. And you can always follow him on Twitter at MungoVits. We'll actually put that in the show notes. So Professor Munger, let's start off the hot. You know, we've got a lot of criticism on big tech, on capitalism. It is election season. I know there are a lot of videos of you out there giving a more nuanced perspective, but what do you think of the stories the past couple of weeks on big tech and criticizing capitalism?
It is interesting that there is a conflation of big tech and capitalism. The story of capitalism is that we try to provide a setting where people make each other better off. The S capitalism is we try to make each other better off because it's based on voluntary exchange. And then competition provides companies with the incentives and frankly the information that they need about how to make consumers better off. And then the difficulty with big tech is that we all admit we're facing a new situation. And what Elizabeth Warren and a number of other people are doing is saying, since we're facing an entirely new situation, what we should do is use a paradigm that we came up with at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, which was the antitrust trust busting paradigm. Now, I used to work for the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. My first job was at the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. The problem with monopoly is that companies restrict output and raise prices. That's not what Facebook is doing. There may be problems with what Facebook is doing, but they're restricting output. It's free and you can do it as much as you want. So we need some kind of new paradigm to think of the problem of big tech. I tend to think of it as being a problem of property rights. That is, I don't really have the right to my identity. And that's because, as often is the case with what Elinor Ostrom called a commons, when the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics, the tragedy of the commons was that we all overused something. The problem with big tech is we have come up with a setting where we don't yet understand how to assign property rights. So the solution probably is some kind of blockchain or way of me to monitor the use of my identity. So rather than saying, let's try to solve this problem by using regulatory technologies that are as innovative as the new technologies we're trying to regulate, we're saying, let's suppose it's 1905 again in America, and we're going to break them up. And it's appalling. It doesn't make any sense. The reason why we need Facebook is so that we all have the same platform to be able to see each other's cat videos. I know that's very important to you, to be able to see cat videos. With seeing the plaid shirt you're wearing, you are a cat guy. You've got to be able to see each other's cat videos. They're not raising price. What they're doing is misusing our data because we've not figured out a way to solve the property rights problem.
And one big point that is brought up by people who are DC insiders, and I don't think we're either of those at the moment, nor am I a cat guy, by the way, not an animal person, but is this idea—
That was a cheap shot. That was totally a cheap shot. I'm sorry.
No worries. You're all good. So one thing that's brought up is Section 230 of the Communications and Decency Act, the idea that many of these publishers should then be held liable according to some sort of actions that are taken on the internet. And we see this a lot with the New York Post stories and many other things that are going on there. What does that mean for the Section 230? If we got rid of that, what would that mean for the internet and its entire economy?
So instead of it being 1905 again in America, it's 1520 again in Europe, where Gutenberg has established a new way of providing information. And it is certainly true that the owner of a printing press might be held liable for the fact that somebody had printed something that was false. So there was a wave of pamphlets and other things that were published. So the act of publishing is actually something that's neutral. So what Section 230 does is say you'll not be held responsible for the actions of others on what is essentially a platform. So Section 230, we call it publishing, what in fact is a platform. And so my new book, which is forthcoming with the Institute of Economic Affairs in London, is about platforms. So what we need to do is have a new regulatory system. And actually, to its credit, Section 230 does a pretty good job of that. So platforms are not held responsible or liable for the things that are done on that platform. And that makes sense because the advantage of having a platform on which speech, commercial activity, other things can play out is crucial to be able to advance. So if there's only one thing that listeners remember from me jabbering this morning, the concept, the ideal solution is two words: permissionless innovation. Permissionless innovation is the solution. And so the less that the state has to do with saying you have to get someone's permission before you write an app, before you do something else, that's what platforms are for. I understand we haven't figured out how to regulate it. This is new territory, but we need to stick with the rebuttable presumption of permissionless innovation. Full out.
We're speaking with Michael Munger. He's a professor of political science over at Duke University and also the author of Tomorrow 3.0, Transaction Costs and the Sharing Economy, very related to what we were just talking about. Professor Munger, I do have to ask, last time we caught up on Joe's program, it was back in March, very beginnings of the pandemic. Knowing what you know and everything that you've lived the past couple of months, and then your own research and writing, has the pandemic sort of upgraded any of your thoughts on whether it be the sharing economy, the economy as a whole, or sort of how we collectively solve problems?
The big difficulty with the pandemic, as many people know now, is that it has accelerated a lot of trends that were happening already. And again, we're trying to provide old and frankly counterproductive solutions, and I'm making air quotes, which makes for great radio, I realize, but solutions to these problems. So there's a lot of people that are fighting for minimum wage and a living wage. What was happening even a year ago was that we were seeing an accelerating move to replace service workers with software. So software and computer apps are to service jobs as robots and automation were to manufacturing jobs. They replace them. So now if you go to a restaurant, you probably order in advance and somebody just brings it out to you. So the people who used to work as wait staff are being replaced by software. So that's accelerating. The number of jobs in the service sector is just going to collapse. That was happening already, but we're now seeing we can meet remotely. So I don't need to travel. I don't need to drive down to Wilmington to be on the show. Now we would often, if I was in Wilmington, I would be on the show. But now it actually makes sense to do this, even if I were going to be in Wilmington, because we're not going to be in the same room. We're going to be a few miles away. So an awful lot of the things that were happening already were accelerated by the pandemic. And we're trying to use solutions that frankly are making things worse, not better.
And for these solutions, I mean, you're director of the PP&E program. You're teaching the next generation of people who would like to get involved in policy and government and economics. Is there something else that you've had to kind of upgrade in your kind of course schedules, if you even are allowed to have courses, by the way? Is there anything that you're having to upgrade? Because I think the way that we do business is definitely changing, but what about the way that we do government? How is that going to change, and what will that mean for the next generation of young people that want to change our society and maybe our laws?
Well, that's a really big question. I'm meeting my classes in person. Duke is a pretty wealthy place, and we can do testing and contact tracing. So I'm meeting all my classes in person, with masks and with distancing. When I say what I just said to you about minimum wage and a lot of solutions not working, the students are astonished because they say, well, we all know that those are good things. Those are the right thing to do. No, what they are is solutions that were concocted by people who are absolutely ignorant of any knowledge of economics. And it seems to them that those are good things to do. And it is bad to have incompetent quacks practice medicine. And many people in favor of science would say, oh, we need to do a better job of understanding science. But when it comes to economics, you can just make stuff up. And so I worry that now more than ever, the understanding of basic economics is important. And I get to tell students that. I get the logic of the problem of policy and understanding the difficulties that we face as a group mean that more than ever, we have to be skeptical of these one-size-fits-all solutions. So again, permissionless innovation, decentralized solutions that allow local groups to come up with solutions to their problems.
And I'd love to switch from your hat that you're currently wearing, which is a beautiful one, to sort of your political candidate hat, if I could. A lot of the issues that we have talked about and discussed, I think, are very pertinent to politics and even state politics. And you are running for District 34 to become a member of the General Assembly in North Carolina as a libertarian. And now we've got an entire field of issues that are opened up across the state. People are actually voting in greater numbers, maybe from what we can tell. Maybe that's all bogus, who knows? But what does it mean for your campaign? Are you still pushing on the same message that you were months ago, or sort of how have your campaign planks changed here over the last few months?
Well, the big problem for my campaign, the issue that I've emphasized most, is the problem of affordable housing. And what I disagree about is the solution. So again, taking the approach that we have to understand basic economics, usually right now in Raleigh, North Carolina, my hometown, which is where my district is, the solution to affordable housing is we're going to have a bond, and then we're going to use that bond to borrow money and pay people to build affordable housing. What we need to do is eliminate the restrictions on building affordable housing. We have a lot of NIMBY restrictions on affordable housing. We have requirements for parking. We have minimum size restrictions. The reason there's no affordable housing is it's illegal to build affordable housing. Stop doing that. So we can have affordable housing in downtown Raleigh if we eliminate the parking restrictions. People think they have a God-given right to parking, subsidized by the public. Stop doing that. So we can solve the problem of affordable housing by eliminating these NIMBY restrictions. The fact is, rich white people don't like having poor people live near them. And they're liberals, so they say, oh, we should give them money, not actually make it possible for them to live and work in the downtown. So if you want to have integrated schooling, if you want to have integrated cities, all you have to do is eliminate the restrictions on building affordable housing. And it's interesting, a lot of people on the left are coming around to this view. So a lot of city planners in San Francisco, New York, Boston are coming around to this view. So surprisingly, I'm actually firmly on the left on this question. It's the sort of, and I love using this word, bourgeois people who are sort of center-left progressives who say, oh, we really like poor people, just keep them away from us. No, we need to integrate our cities.
Wonderful. Professor Munger, great to have you on the radio. How can listeners follow your campaign? How can they buy your books? How can they follow you all across the board?
Well, my books are available on Amazon, and I would say really cheap for the value that you're getting. So Michael Munger, and they'll come up on Amazon. My campaign is Munger for NC34. So the number 4 and the number 34, Munger for NC34. But the best way is to follow me on Twitter, which is just Mungowitz, MUNGOWITZ. And as you said, you'll put it up in the show notes. I look forward to hearing from the listener.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Professor Munger. All the best.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker FM. Yaël Ossowski guest hosting here on the program. It's a beautiful morning here at Wilmington, North Carolina. I hope everyone is doing well. and wanted to give you guys a bit of an international flavor with a good friend of mine, someone I've been in touch with over many years, and someone who has been an influence on me, no doubt. We're speaking with Fergus Hodgson. Fergus is coming to us right now from Houston, Texas. He's the founder and executive editor of the Latin American intelligence publication Econ Americas. He's the roving editor of the Gold newsletter and also host of the Gold newsletter podcast, and a research associate at the Frontier Center for Public Policy. You have one article here, the latest one from about 2 weeks ago. The time for lockdowns is over. Run us through this kind of op-ed and your thinking and some of the evidence, because we're getting renewed lockdowns in many places. You probably saw in Ireland and Wales, they already have national lockdowns, and who knows what's coming down the pike. So what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I basically say that initially we knew so little about this novel coronavirus or COVID, and I thought, okay, we can give some forgiveness to politicians for being a bit knee-jerk or rash about it. However, the time has the time is over for that. Basically, the problem has been a singular focus on risk or damage mediation from the virus without any shred of interest in the collateral damage. And that collateral damage is just mammoth. It's just growing all the time. And the of the benefits versus the costs of lockdowns is just getting ridiculous. And especially in Canada, that's what I focused my article on. The level of indebtedness, the level of GDP decline is just, it's painful, to be frank. It's we're reaching record levels. And this fiscal year, in fact, Canada's deficit is 100 times what it was last year. Canada is actually in a worse position than the United States in terms of profligate spending during this COVID era. And I just said, we've got to have some sort of sanity on this issue. And so there are no excuses now for making these widespread lockdowns, which have very little evidence to support their existence.
Yeah, and there's a lot of examples that you cite, and we'll definitely link to that over on the show notes and everything else. We're here on the Big Talker FM with Fergus Hodgson on the line. Fergus, another project that you're heading up and the lead of is Econ Americas, the frontier of finance.
That's correct.
I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Latin America. I'm seeing a lot of economic analysis. What's the kind of story behind your organization, your firm, your outlet, and what kind of stuff have you guys been covering here the past couple months?
Thank you, Yael. You know my backstory, of course. We're old friends, but we've both worked a lot in media, and I used to be more of a policy analyst and editor, and I still write columns, as you know.
Also, you're a policy analyst here in the state of North Carolina as well, right?
That is true. It's all the people who love the John Locke Foundation. It's a great think tank.
There you go.
I miss my days in Raleigh. And so a few years ago, I decided that I would make a transition and focus on finance. And basically, I have a consultancy, a financial consulting group, and we do all sorts of equity research, economic intelligence, and we have about half a dozen clients, and we're really enjoying it. And I'm studying for a finance degree. I'm doing an MBA at Rice University here in Houston. And we're just building our capacity as equity researchers. And when I say Econ Americas, we have a natural affinity for and experience with Latin America. So we focus on how can Americans expand their reach both into Latin America and into Canada. So it's really a fascinating project. And we particularly are looking for alternative investments because we're in such a zero or negative real interest rate world that people are looking for some way to get better returns. We also know that the price to earnings multiples on the major stock markets are ridiculous, around 30. So the stock market in the United States still is inflated. So people are saying, where else can we explore? And so that's what we do. We've got all sorts of fascinating projects, whether it is the special zones in Honduras, or we're looking at these seasteading projects in Panama. We're exploring the integrated stock market of Latin America, and just lots of fascinating opportunities that we are putting together or exploring to help our clients with.
And you talk a lot about the investing there, and it seems like it's a lot of alternative investing. And I know that you are host of the Gold Newsletter podcast, so maybe you have some thoughts on gold. But I did just see that PayPal is now going to be allowing people to purchase Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin on their platform. What about cryptocurrency? Is that something that in the finance world that, we've been talking about crypto, and for the listeners, Fergus and I have been going back on podcasts and radio shows past decades talking about all the kinds of this stuff. But, are cryptocurrencies something that can still be used or can be mainstreamed, or are still kind of just caught in the technological glut?
Oh, Yael, such a great question. And as you mentioned, we are true believers. We've wanted alternatives to fiat currencies for a long time. And Bitcoin came out in 2009, and I'm guessing we were all on it a year or two after that, exploring how could this be implemented, and I was very excited about it. For whatever reason, more than 10 years on, that just has failed to come to be. I have not given up hope, though. I really think that digital currencies are inevitable, and I do believe too that the advantages to private digital currencies will prove too great for state or fiat currencies to hold off. But when that will be, I cannot say. And I'm not so optimistic about Bitcoin because just technologically, it seems to be, it does have first mover advantage, but it has thus far failed to be practical for just micro purchases or regular purchases. And it seems more of a speculative vehicle for a store of value. And so which other cryptocurrency or which alt currency will rise up, I'm not sure. And I don't know how I would predict that, but I am still optimistic. And if people are willing to do the research, I think there is opportunity there. The problem is that there are about 700 cryptocurrencies with values or market caps over $1 million. And I think about 20 over $1 billion. So there's a heck of a lot of competition.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. And I know there have been debates, and I think, maybe it was 2 years ago, people talking about the split, Bitcoin Cash, all these others. It's been really hard, I think, for, as you said, true believers, those of us who are interested in alternative currencies and alternative investing, to think that there is, another way forward, and it's still kind of caught up. And I'd consider myself a techie guy, but
yes,
even I get lost in the rigmarole. And the problem always was, how do you adapt this to the modern banking system? How can people actually purchase this stuff? And that has always been the choke point. And it's almost impossible. And it seems until you do that, I don't know if this PayPal thing will help. I've been locked out of too many PayPal accounts to count, really. Probably the same for you traveling around, but that's one point. Fergus, one thing that I wanted to discuss with you here on the Big Talker that we've discussed is you are a man of the world. Of course, you have those nice Kiwi pipes on the mic, but you've traveled around and lived in the United States and Canada and throughout Latin America and Europe. Looking at what's going on in the globe and the lockdowns, what do you think of kind of the big reaction to the pandemic in closing down travel and trade? What is your opinion on that?
Well, we live in fascinating times, Yael, and I didn't realize people would be so willing to invite such heavy-handed authoritarianism, and not only to, accept, but to really decry people who stand against that. And it's just very peculiar to me because it's having a disastrous impact on our lives. For example, I'm in a graduate school program, and we barely see each other, right? We're just doing a whole program online, where in the past we would all be going to classes and interacting and building up these good relationships. And that's all been lost. And I just read a report last night about how 3/4 of students are concerned that their long-term earnings will suffer because they lack the networking that they would otherwise have. So in terms of around the world, what do I think about the lockdowns? It just makes me wonder why people are so eager to invite heavy-handedness rather than using a bit of judiciousness or decorum and thoughtfulness about how to handle this responsibly, as opposed to just mandates. And in terms of where to go, in terms of making a home or where the best places are to be, I'm still a big fan of the Anglosphere, right? So I still feel more at peace or optimistic about the British Commonwealth countries, along with Ireland and the United States, but that they're not immune to these same fears or these same reactions withdrawn big government. And you're back here in the United States, and it does seem that the United States has a little bit more sanity on this, a little bit more federalism, which is a wonderful aspect or quality of the country, that is a bit more option, a bit more freedom to choose between the states, and that's so healthy.
Yeah, that's true. And if you do have a healthy heart and hand and want to hear more of this type of analysis, you can follow Fergus on Twitter at Ferg Hodgson. We'll link to all of his stuff. Fergus, where else can people find you, and what else are you working on at the moment?
Well, the best place to go, is Twitter, Ferg Hodgson. Also, econamericas.com if you want to look at our work and get in touch with us. If you would like financial research, we'd love to hear from you. And Yaël, I just wish you the best with your show. It's a privilege to know you, mate. And I'd love to come back on another time.
Wonderful, Fergus. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.
Cheers.
Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on The Big Talker. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back to the Joe Catenacci Show here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM, your top station here in southeastern North Carolina. And I'm very delighted to have on the phone with us and dialing in one of the most popular drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series. We are speaking with Matt DiBenedetto. He is originally from California, but you might know him as the number 21 Ford Mustang driver for Wood Brothers Racing. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. And, this is morning radio here in North Carolina, and we normally talk about what's happening in society and what's talking about politics. But NASCAR is a huge part of what happens here in North Carolina, and that's why I wanted to get you on. You've had a lot of things happen in the last couple of weeks. If any listeners were tuned in to the Talladega race, I think they saw their hearts break as much as yours probably did. But you have been signed for next year, once more to drive the 21 car. Let's just go to that. How does it feel to know that you're going to have a top ride for next season?
Quite the relief, that's for sure. So it was a bit of a stressful process trying to figure out what my plans were for next year, if I was going to be able to stay with the team. And there's a lot of people involved in our organization, between the Wood brothers, the folks at Ford Performance, our alliance with Team Penske, all the Menards, Motorcraft, all our sponsors. So it took a lot of people coming together, and obviously, as you talked about a lot this year, 2020, and the challenges that have been thrown at us, it kind of delayed some of the process. But so glad, it was well worth the wait for sure to have the opportunity.
And we're looking here at your stats in the NASCAR Cup Series. We've got 6 top 5 finishes, 19 top 10s, and a very impressive stat now, 263 laps led. I do remember, I think it was back in Daytona, and then watching the NASCAR Open there during the All-Star race. How does it feel to be, in the Premier League of stock car racing and then actually be leading the field, which you've done now for hundreds of laps, both this season and last season?
Man, that's awesome. The cool part is my career path to get here is what makes me appreciate it so much more, because I've had to drive for smaller teams and kind of rise up through the ranks a little bit of an old school way. So drive for small underfunded teams and climb up that way. And it's taught me so much more by doing it that way. But yeah, coming here and driving for the 21 team, I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface. we just had 2 weeks in a row where we were contending for the win, coming down to the wire at Las Vegas and then at Talladega. So that just shows throughout the course of the year the strength of our team, how we've continued to grow and get better as a team together. So, man, it's cool. Hopefully we can close one out before this year's over. It's heartbreaking to come that darn close, but just glad everything worked out for next year. And then obviously looking forward to that, where we can go and pick up where we've left off and what we built on and go contend for wins and perform. Honestly, I think next year will be even a big step better than this year.
And I think what makes you very unique as a driver, and one reason that I definitely wanted to reach out, is you're someone that people who are, general NASCAR fans, even people who are new fans, they know who you are, they love your story, and they call you, as the hat suggests, the people's champ. So definitely on things like Reddit and Twitter and, through all of these different fan sites, the name DiBenedetto is, right up there. I don't know if when you started to become aware of this, when you could kind of see that you had different types of appreciation and different types of fans. But I actually have been speaking with a lot of different people that I know from my world who are more in, politics and living in DC and stuff. And a lot of them know your name and they know your journey. And a lot of people actually, every time you get up there and you're leading a lap, they feel like they're right there in the car with you. What is that like?
Man, it's been cool. So crazy over the past handful of years, the level of support that I've gained, and really it's not like I do anything crazy or have some tactic to get fans or anything. I just like sharing my experience, my path journey to get to where I'm at. It's definitely been out of the ordinary, how I've gone about it and holy cow, how lucky I've been to get to where I am. That's an understatement, but just sharing that with everybody and with fans. And it's amazing how they've kind of embraced it and not only embraced it, but they've been a part of it too. They've been, a huge impact on my career. That support that they give me, that I get from everybody, all the fans, it has literally made an impact on my career. When everyone's rallying behind me and pushing so hard for me to continue to have these opportunities, that fan support weighs into the decisions. Like, wow, this affects the sponsors and their decisions, on keeping me around. So that's a big impact. And then obviously it's big for the teams when you have everyone rallying behind me and pushing, keep Matt in the 21 and, seeing what we're doing, that we're just getting started, even with all the variables that this year threw at me. So it really makes you appreciate the fans for being a part of this.
Yeah, I remember the Wood Brothers tweet where they announced they were keeping there for next season. And at first they were like, look, everybody, we've got 8,000 likes. And then that doubled instantly. So definitely is a big fan base there for Twitter. One thing you alluded to is obviously the pandemic. And that was tough for a lot of people. I've mentioned it on this program and others. My entire family is affected by NASCAR, both my brother changing tires, my cousin doing chassis, my dad, doing the fabrication, my uncle building motors. I mean, they're over there at your competitor, Hendrick, but man, to see the impact of the pandemic and then not knowing if we were going to have races and then with fans being restricted, what was that whole period like for you as a driver, knowing that, you're there to be in the car and win races. And then all of a sudden you're sitting on the sidelines like the rest of us.
Yeah, it's man, backing up, it is cool that your brother Oren changed tires for me when I was at 32 car. So great dude, but you have a racing family, so that's neat. But yeah, this year, man, it was swept out from underneath us when we just get started. I'm with new team, best opportunity of my life, all this and that, but we're a new group working together, and then boom, it's all done and we go on a break for a while. And I'm like, well, man, this stinks. But then once we get back going, a lot of variables and things we've had to overcome. Like, okay, not only are we a new group working together, we also don't get to practice. We don't get any time at the track together. I can't go in the shop. I can't, build that camaraderie like I normally would. You just can't operate anything like normal. But looking at it from a broader perspective, there's a lot where it makes you just appreciative to be going and doing your job and racing and driving the race car. It makes you appreciate the fans so much because it just feels empty without them at the racetrack. So if anything, I try and look at the positives of stuff. And 2020 has given a much greater appreciation for very, very basic things in life. And obviously, very appreciative on my side. I'm really dang lucky that those are the biggest problems I have to deal with is, is worrying about driving my race car and things. There are people that it's affected their businesses and everything they've worked for their entire lives. I've seen people that have dedicated their whole lives into, building a business and then had everything, taken away from them or going under, and things that are really not fair. So I'm lucky to do what I do for a living and to have my job and to drive race cars for a living.
We're on here, the Big Talker FM in Wilmington, North Carolina. We're speaking with NASCAR Cup Series driver of the 21 Ford Mustang, Matt DiBenedetto. One question, Matt, that I have to ask. Originally a California boy, but you made the move to North Carolina some years ago. Tell us what are your favorite parts of North Carolina? That's something I think our listeners would appreciate. And they might be a little biased towards Wilmington, but I'm sure you've got some great choice places across the state.
Yeah, I just love it out here, actually. And even more of my family is moving from California out here. They're all kind of migrating this way. Just love it out here. Love the culture, the people. Everyone's so friendly out here. It was a big change moving cross country. Where I'm from, though, in some aspects, there were some similarities. I'm from Grass Valley, California, so very, very small town in Northern California, outside the foothills of Sacramento. So very quiet. So actually moving to Hickory, North Carolina, where I live now, was actually a bigger town than where I used to be out there. So it's nice. I love so many parts out here. Wilmington is definitely beautiful. Where I'm at is cool because we're close to Boone and the mountains and stuff. So if I wanted to, go to the mountains, my wife and I want to take a trip, that's close. You got obviously the beach isn't terribly far. I have a lot of friends down in the Charlotte area. Mooresville is beautiful. So it's just, man, I don't know of a better place to live than North Carolina. It's my favorite. This is home for me.
Oh yeah, that's the message we like to hear. And Joe, who's actually normally hosting the show, he's actually off because he is in the mountains. He's over there in Boone and Banner Elk having a good time. So Matt DiBenedetto, it's been great to have you on the radio. We've got 3 races left in the NASCAR season. Regular season's over, but playoffs were made. Kind of preview the last 3 races for you. What are your strengths, and what are you looking forward to?
Actually, these last 3 races, there's a couple things that are great. We are really meshing as a team. We're more prepared now to win and contend up front. The more time you have to work together, especially with the situations here, we just keep getting better. So as you've seen, contending for wins, run up front, that's great. But these last 3 tracks are actually probably some of our best tracks on the whole circuit. Texas, we were running 4th the last race and got wiped out by a lap car, actually, but we're really fast there, so that's a good track for us. Martinsville and Phoenix, probably a couple of our very best tracks of the entire year. So really, really looking forward to those. I love short track racing. That's what I grew up doing. Our 21 team is super good at those places, so I really feel like we have a heck of a shot. Would be great to close out the year with a win and cap off this crazy 2020 year with a win that this team deserves.
No doubt we'll be watching that. You can watch Matt on Sunday, NASCAR race coming up soon. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time here on Big Talker FM.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.
And what an absolute pleasure to speak to Matt DiBenedetto, one of the greatest NASCAR racers out there. You are listening to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker FM. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome to the Mornings with Joe Catenacci show here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. We're broadcasting out to you. It's a great morning here in Wilmington. And on the line, I've got some fairly new Wilmington residents. But I think they're going to be someone here that's going to give us a great story. They're great entrepreneurs, travelers, and everything else. So I'm very pleased to welcome both Travis and Heather Sherry onto the program. How are you guys doing today?
We're great. Thank you so much for having us.
We're here in Wilmington, so of course we're good. This is a great place. We just moved here, and we already know how great it is.
And if you've heard these voices before, then you're definitely familiar with their podcast, Extra Pack of Peanuts Travel Podcasts, one of the top in the travel categories on iTunes, and a huge I say online presence when it comes to those who travel. So let's just kick it into high gear, guys. What's it been like here? And normally you'd probably be out gallivanting around the world. You'd be in some other country, some other space. COVID is limiting that, but you find yourselves in Wilmington. So how did you end up here for the moment, and how have things been over the last few months?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We were supposed to have been in South Africa, just returning from that trip. But with COVID, obviously, I don't think I haven't actually been on a plane this year at all, which is the first time in about 15 years that I haven't been on a plane. So we are here in Wilmington because we bought a house here on the beach, and we love it so much.
Yeah, Heather's right. We definitely wouldn't have ended up here had this not been a pandemic world, really, because we had travel basically booked between April through September, pretty hardcore. And because we couldn't travel, it gave us the opportunity to think about what we wanted more out of a home base. A lot of that had to do with being close to the ocean, also having a big town, small city at our fingertips. And that led us to start looking for places. And Wilmington just had gotten rave reviews from people. So we'd never been here, but we came down, we checked it out, we liked it, and we thought, all right, let's do it.
That's great. So you're kind of in Wilmington, now have your home there on the ocean, which I've been to, is amazing, by the way. Great views of the splashing waves, just beautiful, majestic views. I think many people would be jealous, but probably people who are listening to the station who have all kinds of views and houses there along the coast that make it all worthwhile. So we talked about some of your travel podcasts, and you guys have been doing interviews now for a good number of years. How long have you had the podcast now?
We started the podcast March of 2013. So
okay, I was going to say 2014. That's why I referred to Trav, because he knows the numbers.
We started the website January 2012, and we started the podcast March of 2013. So we've been at it for quite a while at this point.
Yeah, that's a good long run. Most podcasts are like average 4 episodes, so I think you guys have done a good amount. So what has that been like, having to pivot to maybe doing the Zoom thing at home, or actually what is what's it been like kind of building this massive podcast that has people listening in from around the globe?
Well, fortunately for us, we work online, and we have worked online since 2012. So the pandemic hasn't really changed much of our everyday work life. And we've done almost, I would say 95% of our podcasts have always been done over Skype or Zoom. But then we always try to meet up with people in life somewhere IRL around the world, which is really fun to make friends online and to interview them. And then you get to build a friendship with them, and then hopefully see them sometime in the future.
Yeah, one of the hardest things about having a travel podcast and interviewing travelers is that they are usually traveling, right? So as much as we would like to do it in person, most people we've done online. The biggest benefit for us now is that when we say, hey, do you want to hop on a Zoom call? Everyone now knows what it is. Whereas before we'd get these blank stares of Zoom. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's a program where you can chat virtually. So it's pretty cool for us to see, because the other business we run helps people build their own location independent businesses. Essentially, how can you work online to build a business that gives you time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom? And so that has really come to the forefront in the last 7-8 months, with people getting an inkling of what that feels like. Maybe people who used to have to go in an office now can work from home, and they start to say, that's pretty cool. I like that I don't have to commute. So for us, it's been cool to see the maybe society at large shift towards something that we had already been doing, and we're passionate about helping people do even before all of this happened.
You're listening to the Big Talker FM. We're speaking with the husband-wife duo, travel extraordinaires, Travis and Heather Sherry. And another question that I wanted to hit you guys up on, because you mentioned this other project that you have, Travis, and the desire of people to start their own businesses, try to get together, their own, they can be their own boss, their own hustle. Sort of what is the initial pitch to a lot of these people? Because I think there might be a lot of people who, even throughout the pandemic, have had to work this 9-to-5 life. They've been confined to, their normal schedules, their normal boss. What is the sort of I guess the nomad type of business that you are trying to pitch to many people who are listening into your show and your podcast?
Yeah. So thankfully for us, when people find us, they've usually pitched themselves into the idea that they want this lifestyle, right? They're finding our podcast because they're saying, all right, I don't want to do a 9 to 5, quote unquote, regular job for 30 years and then retire and then go off and travel. And so, it's really cool that we have people come to us who already know that they want it. The kind of sticking point becomes, all right, can I actually do it? Right? Like, oh, this is how it is with most people. They make excuses like, well, you can do it because of X, Y, and Z. I can't do it because of this. And so really we focus on is people taking existing skill sets, talents, hobbies, passions that they have that they might not ever consider that they could monetize, and saying, well, look at what you're already doing. Let's pull the pieces out of the life that you already have that you like, keep them, and then fill in the places that you don't like. So someone says, well, I just don't like my commute. Okay, well, let's figure out how you can take the things you're doing and pull that out. So for us, it really comes down to telling people you can own your life again. Like, the decisions you get to make allow you to be proactive in deciding what you want to do versus being reactive. And when people hear that, and I say, think through your day of all the decisions you've made and write them out. How many were you being reactive with, and how many were you getting to decide and being proactive? It's really an aha moment, because they realize most of the things that they're deciding to do are because other people are telling them to do it, or they're beholden to other people. And instead, we want to shift that paradigm to say, you get to be in charge of your own life.
Wonderful. And, through your podcast, through your different communities, definitely follow Extra Pack of Peanuts on both Facebook and Instagram. Is that right? Is there any other cool network that you guys are on that I don't know about?
No, those are the ones that we're heavily on. We use Instagram a lot to, interact with our community, and yeah, those are what we like to use.
Yeah, let's hear about that community. What kind of people have you been in contact with? People who are maybe checking in with you. I mean, you already have a good number of ratings in the iTunes store, so there's definitely a lot of people listening. But what kind of people are checking in to listen to Extra Pack of Peanuts?
Oh, well, we've done surveys, so we know that it's really all across the board. And, we get people of all ages, young people, middle-aged people. We have a lot of retirees who want to learn how to travel more. Some of them are interested in, doing a side hustle in their retirement, but usually it's more for the travel tips. So it's really just all across the board, and people from a lot of different countries as well.
Yeah, I would say the one defining characteristic that kind of blends everyone together, or the line that everyone falls in, is that they just want to travel more, and they want to have more freedom to do it. So a lot of people, if you're US based, you get 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks of vacation, and people are saying that's just not enough. I want to go on a longer trip, and I want to be able to go a month or 2. I want to have like freedom to be able to do that. And that's where the second business came in, was that we were helping people figure out how they could travel cheaper. But then the other thing that they said was, I don't have the time. So we said, well, how can we allow people to create time? It's not that they have more time. It's just now they can decide what to do with their time if they're able to build a business that allows them to be location independent.
Thank you guys so much for coming on The Big Talker. Travis and Heather Sherry, Extra Pack of Peanuts. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook. Let us know, what's your next big project here during the pandemic and in the next couple of weeks?
Honestly, probably just enjoying this beach life, because we're originally from Philadelphia. So this is quite a different lifestyle down here in Wilmington. And we just love how welcoming so many people have been. We've made friends even amidst a pandemic. So we're just going to enjoy this beautiful weather that's still warm, and the ocean.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you guys so much, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
You heard it there. Travel power couple, Heather and Travis Sherry. Awesome stories here on The Big Talker FM. Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski guest hosting. We'll be right back. Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on The Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Yaël Ossowski guest hosting for today's program. It's been an amazing morning, some great interviews that we've already had, planned to have, and you're definitely going to want to stick around for this. Those of you who are interested in media, those of you who are interested in Charlotte and all the cool stuff that's budding up, we've actually got a brand new media organization that has sprouted up out of Charlotte in the last few years. And we're speaking with one of the co-founders and the editor-in-chief of Queen City Nerve, Mr. Ryan Pitkin. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the program.
Hey, man, it's great to get on here and chat with you. I appreciate you having me.
No worries. And, I'm very biased because I've obviously contributed to Queen City Nerve. I've been reading it now for a good while. I think it's a amazing, fresh take, your kind of alternative weekly that people used to pick up in the 90s. We have that not only on the internet, but actually in sort of our published editions. I haven't seen it in the wild just yet, but how's print distribution going right now?
It's going great. We're up near 90% and we've not really fallen. It's been steady for 2 years at that. It was a big part of when we started that, our big thing on the very front cover of our first issue was print is not dead. And we believe that there is still a huge demand for that. It can be harder to convince folks to advertise in print, but as long as you keep that passion alive and continue to fight for it, there are ways to make it work, be it through voluntary subscriptions, things like that. We've tested out all sorts of different models throughout the last 2 years, and we're always trying to find better ways, but we've actually been successful in a way that I was very worried about if you'd asked me in the first couple months of our existence.
Yeah, I think it's great to see, good alternative media popping up across the state. It's North Carolina has been interesting. I've worked in the major newspapers and contributed to radio and been part of different projects, but to see the Queen City Nerve grow as it has been really awesome. So yeah, tell us the background. What kind of pushed you and some of your co-founders to found the Queen City Nerve? Where did the idea come from, and what does nerve mean? Let's get to those questions.
Yeah, definitely. So it came about very quickly, actually. I came from the alt weekly world at a publication called Creative Loafing Charlotte that had actually been around for 31 years by 2018 when it shut down. I was there full time since 2015. I'd been an intern back in 2008, freelanced a lot of stuff, then went on and was a managing editor at Union County Weekly, a small sort of more just hard news community newspaper down in Union County, which is right south of us, southeast of Charlotte, Mecklenburg. But then I got called back to become a news editor at Creative Loafing in 2015 and was there until 2018. There was one of those situations, it was a publisher who was sort of absentee, guy from Greensboro named Charles Womack, who owns a few different papers and a couple different alt weeklies here in Charlotte. Yes Weekly up in Greensboro being one of them, and that's where he sort of is his home base. And he was very hands off, which we took as a good thing then. He didn't try to get involved in any of the editorial or anything like that, like a lot of publishers in that sense will do. But there was also a sort of hands off way of us not knowing how we were doing ever. And on Halloween Day, 2018, we had just sent the paper to print and all of our emails went dead.
Wow.
Like almost immediately. And then he came and knocked on the door, and that's when we knew, that's not a good sign, because he does not live here and he does not come by often. And he just told us, the paper's not making money. We're splitting on it. We're done with this. We're going to shut it down completely. He said he was going to sell it to his son to run as an online publication, which is still somewhat doing, but it's a very strange, odd publication, if I can say so. Like it's weird health and wellness stuff and pro-Trump and CBD. I don't know what, I can't describe it. It's not worth checking out. Let's put it that way.
Well, we like the CBD stuff. I don't know about the political things.
For sure. And cool. It's just a very weird hodgepodge. But that being said, we, within the first within the first 7 days, someone reached out to us as investors and asked, who is now my publisher and business partner, Justin LaFrancois. He was a sales rep at Creative Loafing, and asked if we'd be interested in doing, starting our own independent paper. And I jumped right on board. He said, I would be in the business side of things. I would only do it if you agree to run the editorial side of things. And that was sort of our, let's do it. And within, I want to say 40 days or so, it was December 6th when our first issue came out. And we've just been going at it from there.
So we're speaking with Ryan Pitkin of the Queen City Nerve. This is not your normal newspaper. I mean, you guys don't try to be the Charlotte Observer or the Raleigh News and Observer. You don't try to be any of these papers. You really do cover stories from, a good critical angle. And, you kind of can do things that you probably couldn't do at a traditional news organization. So what's it been like for you as an editor, sort of sourcing many of these stories, getting writers together? How is that different, let's say, than the more traditional media outlets in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts about it is we pride ourselves on being what I would call a community journalism paper, meaning that you don't have to be a writer to write for a paper. I'm willing to work with whomever has a story to tell, and if I think or they think that they'd be the ones to tell it rather than me just go in and do the tired Q&A. But if they write a certain story in their own first person experience, and that's great. We also do old school, or I guess old school is not the right word, but your traditional reported out pieces. What I spend most of my time doing outside of, I don't know, I do 100 jobs, but we try to do a good mix of, we'll run op-eds, opinion pieces here and there online. We'll run first person experiential pieces. We'll run reported out pieces and feature stories, and we'll run multimedia projects, whether it be our News Hounds podcast, where we take a different sort of very informal look at local news stories, or whether it be our live stream coverage of the protests, which was very a learning process for me, because I come from that traditional journalism world and my publisher doesn't, and he just sort of turned on a live stream one time because I was live tweeting at the first protest that happened in Charlotte over these during the summer, and it blew up and got super popular. And he's just going to tell the story as he sees. He's getting in arguments with police officers, he's getting arguments with activists. He's just out there living it emotion by emotion. And I'm sitting there like, you can't do this. But it became so popular that, and I'm also having to realize we can do whatever we want, to be honest. I mean, he's not telling lies. That's the main thing.
Sure.
So that's sort of our one rule, I guess you could say. There's plenty of, unethical stuff we don't do, but as long as someone's not telling a lie, then we're going to be telling stories our way. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I loved seeing a lot of these reports, and it was incredibly raw. It's on the street, and I know that you had reported in one of your articles from the Republican National Convention parking lot. Interesting story there, and I had covered the RNC back in Tampa in 2012, and that was crazy as well, because it's almost like a parallel reality. You have everybody's with cameras, and there's like riot police, and all these people are not mainstream people you see on television. These are really like
are
whack-a-moles from every part of the political spectrum. And what I really liked about the live streams that you guys are doing during the protest is, we were actually seeing the truth, and we were seeing something raw, and it wasn't filtered, it wasn't edited, for TV or to fit some political narrative. And I think that was very much appreciated. So I think definitely that helped in probably boosting a lot of your numbers.
It did, yeah. It made a huge change in just the awareness of us in the city. We had been doing plenty of good reporting, and I'm proud of that reporting, but it's just such a struggle as a startup journalism outfit that to just get people to know that you exist. And there's so much good journalism in Charlotte that's been around for such a long time. Some of it's newer, some of it's older, but there's just a lot of stuff being reported out from different outlets. So to get people just to know that we are what we are has been a huge struggle, and that definitely helped in that regard, because people just took to it. They're watching it on their TVs every night.
You don't become a news source without making a couple enemies, specifically in Charlotte and the Queen City. Who are the enemies of Queen City Nerve, at least maybe in the political or media scene?
It changes to day, because I think for the most part, we started out with that old publication being our enemy, because then when they saw what we wanted to do, they decided we're going to go back and print too. And we were like, all right, this is going to drive us, because we really drove those first 2 or 3 months by the seat of our pants. We were driven off spite alone for our former publisher, but they sort of put up such a bad fight that it wasn't as fun. But that was more of a competition thing. As far as so-called enemies, we we're always fighting with trolls. We got a lot of attention during those live streams from folks who are they love to get on our website and say some of the most ridiculous, racist, just anything you can think of to get us riled up. And that stuff will work on Justin sometimes. And I shouldn't even say that because I don't want to encourage anybody, but we'll go back and forth with folks. But then again, we're always stirring the pot as well. We did a story, I don't even know how to describe it because it was really just a Twitter thread from Justin being at a local bar a week or two ago where the whole city council went on one night after a day-long meeting they did. And they were there at this bar that had just opened after 6 or 7 months of being closed. And this bar was working hard to follow all regulations. And the city council, of all people, had multiple folks in their group, including the mayor, who were not following mask mandates, who were sort of being very sloppy with it. We had a city council member who was cracking jokes about it being a dive bar in really sort of condescending way. And Justin was just sitting there tweeting all of it as it occurred. And that really made a huge hubbub in the city. And I think that's a perfect example of how we're just always out and about, and we're going to be recording or documenting it in one way or another, be it a live stream or a Twitter or whatever. And that always ends up, people were not happy with us for that. But
no, but hey, you were able to, you were able to reveal the hypocrisy. And,
Right.
I was following that as well. And I just thought it was hilarious. Here are the people who tell us exactly how we're supposed to live and the rules that we're supposed to follow. And the second they go outside, rules don't apply to me. So
Right, exactly.
appreciated that so much. So we've been speaking with Ryan Pitkin. He is at the Queen City Nerve, co-founder and editor-in-chief, queencitynerve.com. Ryan, what are some of the projects that you've got going on or things that a lot of the listeners can go and check out on the website or in the printed edition?
Right, yeah. So we just earlier this morning sent a newest paper to print, volume 224, which would make that about number 50. I think that might have been our 50th paper ever if we did 26 a year. I didn't think about that until just now. We could have put a little symbol on the paper. But so this one is sort of a Halloween theme, but as usual, we do it in our own sort of voice, which is not just telling ghost stories, but not straight hard news, sort of a mix of the two, where Saturday night I went with some folks on my staff to a ghost investigation at Rosedale Plantation here in Charlotte, and we wrote about the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society and what they do and what their beliefs are, and they take their job serious. And we did a little ghost hunting ourselves and wrote it first person. I wrote a story that is more hard news, and it still has a bit of a spooky twist in the sense that it's this abandoned cemetery that if you walk by on a really busy road in Charlotte, Remount Road, you can notice these protruding grave outlines poking out, and it's been rumored throughout the years to be a slave cemetery. And I've done research over the last 2 months and met with some descendants who have actually been working for years to prove that it's not. It is their ancestors, the Schumann family that lived there and farmed the land, did not have enslaved people on the land. And they've identified over the last decade about 16 people they think to be there. So I wrote what I find to be, as the son of a genealogist, a really interesting story about just sort of where those reports came from and what they're doing now to try to finally, this has been an abandoned lot for many, many years. No one's paying taxes on it, and what needs to be done to get recognition. They're doing a fence building day out there this Saturday. That'll be the first step, but it's going to be a long road ahead because no one's even claimed the land yet. So those are sort of where we take a look at Halloween and how we can do an issue that mixes news with first person with, I say opinion. I wrote an op-ed. I wrote an editor's note in between. In the beginning of each issue. So, and that's mixed with just regular food and culture and music reporting as well. So lots of good stuff in each issue. And then we're also putting up new content every day on our website at qcnerve.com.
That's beautiful. Perfect, Ryan. Thanks so much. You can follow him on Twitter at Pitkin_Ryan. Ryan, thanks so much for being here on the Big Talker FM.
Thanks so much, Yaël, and look forward to it and look forward to doing it again sometimes. Let me know when you write another piece.
All right, will do. Thanks so much.
All right.
You're tuned in to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker FM. One more segment to go. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski, your guest host, as I've been all morning. Been a pleasure to have been on the air and to speak to all of you. It's a great morning here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Hope all of you are doing well. And I thought it was time to ring up our next guest. On the line with me now is Maria Chaplia. Maria has been a colleague of mine for several years. She has been coming to us from all over the world. She's actually lived in the United States, in the UK, in France, in Ukraine. She kind of bounces around, and I think we see the world in much the same way. And, if you don't know Maria yet, you'll know that she's the European Affairs Associate at Consumer Choice Center, along with me. But she's also a writer in her own right, and you can visit her website, mariachaplia.com. Maria, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Yael. Very happy to be here.
So for people who might not know you, who might have seen your name, we've definitely mentioned some of your work on Consumer Choice Radio that broadcasts on the weekend. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What are you interested in? And what have you been up to these last several years?
Sure. So I'm from Ukraine, from Western Ukraine, from Galicia, so the region that is called Galicia. I'm a law graduate, and I got involved with Students for Liberty when I was in my third year in law school, and that's how my journey in activism, advocacy, and everything else began. So I started as an activist, and then I went to the US to do an internship in communications and development. Then I lived in London doing some fundraising. And then I got involved with the Consumer Choice Center, first as a media associate, and now I work as European Affairs Associate, more focused on EU Parliament and stakeholder engagements. But in terms of my interests, Students for Liberty and the Consumer Choice Center have been key in helping me find my passions and my interests. So as of now, I focus more on international trade issues such as obesity, lifestyle economics, and feminism a bit. But when it comes to my personal interests, aside from policy, it's also history, ecology, philosophy, arts, and many, many.
Definitely, yeah, busy woman. And we're speaking with Maria Chaplia here on Mornings with Joe Catenacci, Yaël Ossowski guest hosting. Maria, a couple of things that I noticed when going through your own writing portfolio and a lot of articles. You mentioned international trade. That's something that, has kind of been lost in the COVID age. We're not really thinking about international trade as much. We saw a lot of borders that have been erected. Definitely people are not able to travel. But what has kind of the COVID age meant for trade, in your opinion?
Oh, I think it has been quite destructive, mainly because countries were not prepared for the pandemic of anything of this kinds of global scope. And because international trade involves a lot of connectivity between countries, and they are supposed to rely on each other, and there's so much infrastructure and customs and all of this goes into trade. COVID has been very destructive, but also it's sort of international trade requires globalization and cooperation, but both are partly to blame for why COVID expanded in so many countries and has become a pandemic. So, international trade has been in decline, I think, starting from last year. Because of Trump's tariffs and trade wars, it's been a challenging time for trade overall. And because of the European Union not being very open to trade with other countries, such as Mercosur agreements, we know doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere. So there's lots of challenges in this field, but we have to stay optimistic that once COVID is over and the world's got a taste what this protectionist world can look like, we can go back to international trade and free trade, to be more precise.
And I would not have you on without obviously talking about your work, but also where you are right now and some things that you might be more familiar with. And to an American audience, hearing someone from Ukraine, well, that's definitely interesting. I guess that's come up in the headlines a little bit. I'm talking about the kind of Hunter Biden stories and everything surrounding Joe Biden, impeachment. It's been a crazy time to have sort of the Ukraine-U.S. relationship just built upon this really strange mistrust and oligarchs and somebody's getting impeached. What has it been like in Ukraine to sort of be so involved in U.S. politics at this moment?
Well, there was a funny interview from BBC, an interview with our president, and it was such a funny moment. The interviewer asked him, "So, does Ukraine want Joe Biden to win?" And he just started laughing. And he just started laughing. It was so shocking, but it sort of explains the situation here. They don't know what to do. But I mean, from what I see here, many Ukrainians, obviously, they don't seem to buy into Biden's son's story. They are more like, yes, because Biden would probably be a better candidate as they see it. So they are quite, I mean, advocacy goes, I don't know, the politics is different, but as it seems to me, when it comes to Ukrainians, they prefer Biden, but that's just, I don't know, it's politics.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a lot of, who controls the energy politics, and because there's this, connection with Russia, which took over territory from Ukraine. There's still this little nebulous cloud. Most Americans have absolutely no clue of the difference between Ukraine and Russia, I would gather. But actually here, what is the main difference? And tell us a little about Crimea, and how that's changed your life here in the last few years, Maria.
Yeah, actually, a funny story. I was once taking an Uber in Virginia, and a driver asked me, "You are probably from Europe, but you must be from Russia." And when I told him I was from Ukraine, he was like, "Yeah, but it's probably the same country." It's like, no, it's not. I guess that there's so many differences. Our languages are different, our cultures are different, and I think Ukraine is as a big country, every region is sort of different from another one, and it's really hard to say what something united Ukrainian identity is, but it's very much different from Russia, and of course Russia has took part of our territory, as it had done many times in history. So we are in this again. And I mean, what's been interesting when it comes to Crimea and the Revolution of Dignity in 2013 is that Ukrainians have started to feel a bit more patriotic, especially Ukrainians in the East. They started to sort of see this difference between them and Russians, even though they live close to each other. And when you go to the east of Ukraine, like cities like Kharkiv, when they talk about weather, they like, yes, in Moscow it's going to be 15 degrees or something, because they are so close to this part of the world and they know each other, they probably have relatives. But now, because of the occupation of Crimea and the war in the east of Ukraine, Ukrainians are starting to feel more like a nation, and that's something to be excited about, I think.
Yeah, and it was definitely for any listeners who would like to read more on certainly Ukrainian identity. Maria has plenty of articles there. And the part where you are from used to be part of the Austrian Empire, so very happy about that. But one thing, Maria, that you just kind of mentioned there, it got me thinking, we go back to the Cold War. People in the West, let's say America, UK, France or something, you didn't really know too much about what was happening behind the Iron Curtain. You didn't have as free of a media. And when the Berlin Wall came down, we thought, okay, well, that's all over. We kind of know now. There's more information. Now we have the internet in the year 2020. But even throughout like the Crimean invasion and whatever's happening with the Republic of Georgia and today Armenia, we still don't know what the truth is. We don't know like the truth in reporting. It's really hard to separate the real news from the, I'll get flagged here, but fake news. Yeah. How do you, as someone who is a young Ukrainian woman who's actually interested in global affairs, how do you stay up to date on what's real and what's not? And how do you separate real news from the fake?
Well, when it comes to Ukrainian news, there's a number of sources I just sort of trust. But when it comes to international news, I mean, it's mainly reading from my feeds. I follow like Wall Street Journal, BBC, but BBC is sort of tricky because they have their own bias. But when it comes to COVID news, I just follow this COVID meter website where they publish the data. So I don't get this bias parts, because if you said what I've noticed, especially with regard to COVID news, if you get so obsessed with following everything that's happening, it can have terrible implications on your mental health. It's just not insane. So
no doubt, Maria. And if you would like to follow Maria on Twitter, she is at Chaplia with an A on the end, 2 A's there. Maria, thanks so much for joining us on the radio. One final, I guess, push to you. Where can some of our listeners find you, and what are you working on next?
Well, recently I've started working a bit more in the fields of vaping, and I've published a paper with the Consumer Choice Center on I mean, the main question we wanted to address in our paper was whether vaping helps people to take up smoking, or whether it's the other way around, whether vaping is a safer alternative to tobacco consumers. I'm working a lot in the fields of antitrust and digitalization in the European Union, and yeah, I mean, it would be really complicated for me to single out some specific issues, because there's so many I work on, but it's still international trade, it's still antitrust and competition, it's still lifestyle freedoms, and yeah, many, many more. Something comes up every day.
We've been speaking with Maria Chaplia. She is European Affairs Associate at the Consumer Choice Center. Maria, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Yael, for having me.
And we'll be right back here on the mornings with Joe Catenacci. So plenty to come, plenty of interviews. We look forward to those. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski here as your guest host for the Thursday morning program. And I'm very excited by our next guest. Not only is he my good friend, but he's also a partner at the Roadmap Advisors Group in Atlanta, Georgia, and co-host of the Why Pay podcast. We're speaking with Mr. Alan Holmes out of Atlanta. Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Yael. I'm happy to be here, man. Amidst the craziness of the pandemic, we're going to have a good discussion and we're going to catch up. And I look forward to talking to the audience and talking to you.
Very good. It's good to hear you on Wilmington Talk Radio. I know we've spoken before for our program, Consumer Choice Radio, but figured since there's a lot of stuff happening, there might be something called an election in the background. And I wanted to talk about your new project as well. So one of the topics that we discussed last time that we were together is the idea of reparations for American descendants of slavery, for Black Americans, African Americans. And you worked on this idea, you thought about it, you did some research, some writing, and now you've launched your own podcast. Tell us what that's all about.
So look, this is I guess you could call it a passion project, man. A good friend of mine, Khalil English, who is lives here in Atlanta and is an electrical engineer. He was kind of the one who, told me about Professor Sandy Darity from Duke. Kind of talked to me about the racial wealth gap and data that 3 years ago I wasn't as aware of, even though obviously most people understand injustice. And so at a certain point, we decided that it was time for a podcast to reach people like us, people who might not know the data, might not understand how wide the gap is, educating people and just getting more people to consider why it's necessary to give reparations to descendants of slavery. And we're talking about everybody, not just Black Americans, white American, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, everybody, just to understand the injustice and support it. But we're going to just come with data, come with numbers, and we're going to just lay out the case based on a lot of the great work that people have already done, like Professor Sandy Darity from Duke.
And that's Why Pay Podcast. I believe it's whypayreparations.com. Is that right, Alan?
Yes.
Super cool. I know you got that up and running. And one thing I wanted to comment on, because I did listen to the program, and I would recommend the same for everyone else. And if you want to listen to part one of the conversation that Alan and I had on Consumer Choice Radio, you can just Google our names, or we'll actually put a link to it here, because I think it's a very good introduction, Alan. We went through the history, went through some of the initial claims. Let's advance that, because one thing Khalil brought up in the program that I really liked, and is a new perspective that I'm hearing more, is the idea of a kind of class action lawsuit on behalf of American descendants of slavery. We could talk about that term later. But on behalf of American descendants of slavery, a kind of class action lawsuit against a federal government that did abridge civil rights and human rights for many years. Is that a kind of accurate portrayal of maybe one facet of the reparations movement?
Yes, I think that could be definitely a part of it, because I don't think there'll be just one strategy. I think we're going to have to come at it from just a number of angles. Some sort of a class action lawsuit is possible. I think what you see passing in California, where they passed the bill to study, what you see that passed in Evanston, Illinois, where they passed I wouldn't consider that reparations, but some sort of reparative economics there. And then what they passed in Asheville, which is kind of reparative economics, not necessarily, again, the cash payments, but it is some added policy. So I think all of that's going to have to happen, because in the perfect world, you think it would just pass the House and pass the Senate, but we know that that's not a guarantee at all. It's going to be a severe uphill battle to get it federally taken care of by legislation. A lawsuit might be another way as well.
And reparations is, this would not be a small idea, right? This would be, if we kind of added up, going back to the end of slavery throughout the Jim Crow era. I mean, this is likely unto the trillions, which again, we're pretty familiar with spending trillions now. So I think that conversation's over. But one thing that, I have to say for these local bills, and here's where there's a little bit of criticism here. Do you think they're passing these? Is it actually moving the ball forward, or is this more sort of around election time trying to gather, and let's be honest, let the Democrat kind of get out the vote spirit? Because California and reparations, California didn't have slavery. Wouldn't we be more impressed if the state of Georgia passed this, or Florida, or North Carolina? Do you think that this is actually moving the ball down the field, or do you think it's kind of more signaling to around election time?
Well, I think that I would say that beyond, cash payments, things like education policy revisions regarding student loans, regarding financing college educations, housing plans, those are important targeted grants to small businesses. Those are a part of what needs to be an overall agenda, which that's what Evanston and Asheville's plans would do. But we have to remember, Black Americans will not be made whole until the cash payment portion is included. So I wouldn't say it's nothing. I wouldn't say it's political. I would just say that we need to make the understanding that it's not going to significantly close the gap to the extent that it should, but it will potentially do some good. That's the way I would look at it. It's a baby step forward, but ultimately, I mean, I think, the federal government for anything to move forward cash payment wise, the federal government's going to need to be involved. And the way I put it is this: there's nothing stopping major corporations that had a connection to slavery from adding money to a pot. It would make the prospect of this happening more likely, because estimates have been at 11 to 14 trillion. So if JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Delta 11
Airlines, 11 to 14 trillion
Brooks,
would be an amount for reparations, you mean?
That's what some have estimated. So if 6 major companies said we'll put up 7 trillion, I just think that would help the prospect of the government maybe saying, all right, well, we'll come up with the other 7 instead of 14.
Definitely. Yeah, and
So it's definitely, I mean, I think that, you know, I'm a realist. You know, I've been in this political game for a while, Yael. So I would say it's a 20% chance that this ever happens, but that's still a chance.
Yeah, and I think the coalition could grow mostly about people who can discuss this, talk about it intelligently, and actually put forward a plan. And you know, maybe it starts out at a small level. One other question that I had on that is, so let's assume reparations in some facet goes through the next decade. You know, is that going to have to be packaged with other systemic changes, right? Because we hear about systematic racism. We hear about, you know, the inadequacies when it comes to policing. If there's only reparations and cash payments, does that not mean that the inequities will still exist?
No. So I just think that it's a huge piece, but the whole plan does need to be comprehensive. So as I've said, you know, like Joe Biden's Lift Every Voice plan, if it included reparations, it would be fine because it touches on housing policy. It touches on, you know, the huge barrier, which is the student loan interest rate, differences and disparities, the amount of debt that Black and white college graduates have, addressing that's important. And then aid to capital to small businesses, that's important. So it has to all happen. So yeah, if it's just reparations, it won't completely address all the issues. But you know, but I would say, you know, having $200,000 to $400,000 of a cash infusion into your life for those who are responsible, you'll pay off some debt, you'll save, you'll probably have money for this business that you have been running for 5 years, but you really didn't have capital. You're just winging it. Or to get that down payment on the house that when the bank told you it was 15 grand, you knew you didn't have it. Definitely. So it will that infusion of cash will be significant, but everything else does need to happen as well, policy wise.
So we're speaking with Alan Holmes here on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci program. You can follow him on Twitter, OH_Holmes. Alan, one thing I want to talk about is the elections. We definitely have this in our background, and there are different sides that have put together a case of why we should vote for one candidate or another. One interesting thing I've seen in the polls is that it seems like African-American support of Biden, in a way, has not necessarily increased, but there's been a tad little bit on the Donald Trump side, which is really interesting because that goes against much of what we've seen, you know, the past couple of years. And, you know, it kind of made my head scratch a bit. You know, is there a kind of part of, let's say, the African-American community that likes the principles of Donald Trump? Maybe they don't like him personally. Maybe they like his economics or something like this. Could that be something that would be driving a small number of people to be voting for Trump?
Well, I think that what's interesting is that I wish I knew exactly what the thought process was of them, because, you know, I've been a Democrat for all of my life, and I see some people who are frustrated who may be independents, but it really is kind of shocking to me. I think that I would have guessed more Black men, if they were going to be dissatisfied with the Democratic Party, would simply just be independent. So I think some of it,
or vote libertarian. Come to the dark side.
or libertarian if they choose. But I think that some of it may have to do with just the perception that some people had of Donald Trump before he became president. I don't know, because like you remember, a lot of rappers, a lot of other people will reference Donald Trump in their songs. And we remember before Donald Trump was the president, everybody kind of, some people thought it was a joke. Some people just like, oh, Donald Trump. And so I don't know if that has to do with it from a certain subset of people who are a little older to have known just him in general, maybe. Because I know like people who are young, I would think hate him. Like a young Black man who is 18 to 21, who just has the knowledge of the Trump that they've known, hate him. So I'm not sure. It has to be an older subset of Black men that might, and it could be. I think that it could just be a, it could just be Some people thinking that the Democratic Party hasn't done anything either. But I just, again, for so many black men, they're independent. They don't vote at all. So neither party has done as much as they should have. But I just think that I don't see much benefit in it at all, like at all, for them to support Donald Trump. But the data doesn't lie, man. Hispanic voters and black voters, Joe Biden is underperforming with. So, you know, like I said on Twitter a few days ago, black voters saved Joe Biden in the primary, and it looks like white voters are going to save him in the general because he is overperforming with white voters if the numbers hold in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona. So really, he doesn't need us anymore. And I've told people this is a numbers game. He doesn't need us anymore. So the dynamic of what we're discussing is going to be interesting in January if Joe Biden wins, which if the polls hold, it looks like that's going to happen. How is he going to please the black voters who saved him and the white voters who saved him in November, because they have completely different interests? You have people like me who are talking about reparations, and some black people aren't, but a lot are. And then you have white voters who are probably obviously just jobs in the economy. They want things to improve, but he has to deliver for people who are going to be expecting it. So that tension is going to be interesting in January. It will be tension.
Definitely.
So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. You see Puff Daddy, he just launched he's funding a 527 political organization.
P. Diddy. He's
now
in the
Our
lobbying
Black
game.
Party. Yeah,
Okay.
the media kind of ran with a story that was slightly inaccurate, saying that he had started a black political party. It's just called Our Black Party, but it's actually a 527 group, which will just advocate by way of ads, direct mail, TV, radio, to push a black policy agenda. Now, I didn't see anything about reparations, but I would assume they are kind of on that same wavelength. So that's just one group among many who are already forming. And they said, when Joe Biden gets in, we will aggressively lobby harder than we ever have for the return on this investment that we're making into Joe Biden. So it's going to be, I'm telling you, man, it's because I think we have 2 years. If Democrats take the Senate and Joe Biden wins, they will have 2 years to do something before they lose the Senate again. I just think the whole Americans prefer divided government. So maybe they'll dump Trump. Maybe they'll dump the Republicans, but people have short memories, and you know how it'll happen. It'll just, Democrats will do something dumb, or the economy will not be going as people expected in Q2 or Q3, and then boom, Democrats gone, but they still can get something done in 2 years. We just need them to focus on getting some results before they lose the power again, because every party always loses power at some point.
Oh, yeah. And it might come in the election time, might come now. And who knows, Alan, maybe Puff Daddy will be ringing your phone after this interview. So
oh, man.
Be good to know. We've been speaking with Alan Holmes here on Big Talker FM. Alan, thanks so much for coming on. He's the co-host of the Why Pay podcast. We'll link to that in all of our show notes and everything else. Alan, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
All right, thanks for having me, Yael.
All right, see ya.
You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.
You're tuned in to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski filling in for the 3-hour time slot here on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. And I'm very happy to have on one of the most enterprising writers and journalists out there, someone you must catch and follow everywhere you may. We're talking with Mr. Brad Polumbo, who is the opinion editor at fee.org. He's a journalist who's been published in many large mainstream papers, and now graces us with the presence here on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci show. Hello, Brad. Thank you for coming on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about some of the latest articles that you've written. And I mean, you definitely are a fast writer, so you're definitely catching up on what's happening now. And one article that we definitely have discussed on the station is about the New York Post article, Big Tech and Everything with Hunter Biden. And the article title that you had put together is Big Tech Tried to Censor the New York Post Hunter Biden Story. They made it huge instead. So I wanted you to kind of unpack this a little bit and tell us, what was going on behind the scenes for this thing, and what does it mean kind of for the future of journalism?
Right. So it was a pretty concerning development from my perspective. As a journalist, the original New York Post story was not super impactful because it was disputed. It was thinly sourced. It was kind of a sketchy story, but who knows how it would have played out, but I barely even heard about it. But then all of a sudden, when they tried to censor it, when Facebook throttled it and Twitter literally banned the link and then banned the press secretary of the United States for tweeting it, shut off her account. And just even now, like a week later or a few days later, they still have locked the New York Post out of their Twitter account with millions of followers. So this kind of unprecedented shutdown of the free flow of a disputed but actual reputable journalism website and newspaper, it really disturbed me to see big tech doing that. And it also kind of backfired. Like I mentioned, they made it 1,000 times more influential and among conservatives as a result.
We're speaking with Brad Polumbo here in the Mornings with Joe Catenacci program. You can also catch Brad on his own podcast, Breaking Boundaries, which we'll link to here in the show notes. And Brad, following up on this, we always hear about big tech, and there's been all these hearings on Capitol Hill basically now for the last couple of years, and everyone always wants to talk about whether it be bias against conservatives, is normally the Republican talking point, and this monopoly power more on the sides of the Democrats. What's the real story here? Because I think everyone sort of sees these companies as political actors, but what is really behind them blocking certain things? Maybe it is a political consideration. Why do you think they kind of go above and beyond in trying to cut out some of these links from their platforms?
Well, look, there's no doubt that there's a political bias to big tech, even if it can certainly be exaggerated at times. I mean, there's objective data that prove this. I mean, you go and look at the Democratic or the political donations of employees at Facebook or Twitter, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but you're talking about north of 90% of all donations going to Democrats, right? So even if it's not some evil plot to, rig the internet against conservatives, it's just a matter of subconscious bias. We all have it. And when you have companies that are run by a segment of people that is extremely liberal, there is bias that happens there. And I think that's indisputable at this point. But on the other hand, the arguments from, like you said, Democrats, but also from some of these nationalist Republicans about kind of monopoly power is pretty foolish for a couple reasons. I mean, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri just tweeted the other day that Facebook was a monopoly, and he didn't seem to realize the irony that he was tweeting it. And so, there is some competition. Is there a lot? No, but there's some, and they're not monopolies. And more importantly, it's really hard to point to consumer harm from big tech. I mean, whether it's Google or Facebook or Twitter, they're providing millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of Americans, with free, innovative digital services at no cost. So do they do a lot of things I don't like? Yes. Are they monopolies preying on Americans? No, not at all.
Does that mean you're going to be joining Parler, as is the trend these days?
I do have a Parler account, actually.
Oh, nice.
And I think I see no reason not to, because Twitter and Facebook are private platforms, and they have every right to censor people if they want. That's their legal right, even if I personally disagree with it. So part of that should be people competing and going elsewhere, accumulating email lists and starting competitors and diversifying their reach. And so, yeah, I have a Parler account. I don't use it a whole ton, but maybe I'll get banned for some wrong think at some point and need to make the switch.
Yeah, that's likely. It's happening to everyone these days. So we're speaking with Brad Polumbo of the Foundation for Economic Education. He's the opinion editor at fee.org. And another article I wanted to point to is one on court packing. We've heard a lot about this in the last couple of weeks, surely in the kind of Supreme Court nomination hearings. What is the big deal about court packing? Is this something that we should be debating or talking about? Is this something that really even rises to the occasion for something for us to consider in 2020?
I do. I actually think it's one of the most grave and pressing issues in America right now, and that's saying something. But you have the Democratic Party for the first time in modern history, right? Certainly in my lifetime, saying that either some of them are saying they would pack the Supreme Court, and then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are refusing to rule it out and flirting with the idea. And just so everyone understands what packing the Supreme Court means, that means destroying the judiciary. That means taking the third branch of government and subverting it to the will of the other two. It means undermining the checks and balances that the American system built in to ward against oppressive and expansive power. So court packing means expanding the number of justices, adding them to the court, which you technically could do if you passed a law. It wouldn't be illegal. But what that would do is allow them to stack the court with liberal judges who will uphold their agenda and be a rubber stamp. So it undermines the checks and balances that preserve our freedom.
Yeah, and I think that gives us a lot to think about, because in the last couple of weeks, what we've heard is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's last wishes were that no nominee be put forward until after the election. We heard all kind of deathbed confessions, and now it seems as if we're contemplating something that would be a huge change in American society. I mean, in a way, this would definitely favor likely the legislative branch, would you say, or executive, or is this just mostly a party play?
Well, it is a political play, and it's interesting that you mentioned Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because she was very liberal on all sorts of things, but she opposed court packing. She said that packing the Supreme Court was the one thing you could do to destroy the credibility of the judicial branch. Yet Democrats, apparently they love her final wishes, just not on that one. And that's something that's really alarming to me, because court packing is the kind of thing that can't be undone. You pack the court once, then your opponents pack it when they get power again, and then it sets off this destructive spiral and cycle. And before you know it, we don't have a credible Supreme Court to keep executives of either party in check. So whether you're a Democrat and you hate Donald Trump, or you're a Republican and you're worried about what Joe Biden would do to your religious liberty, either way, you should want a Supreme Court that's independent and can keep the other branches in check. Court packing assaults the court's independence and probably destroys it irreparably.
Now, Brad, we're just a few weeks from the election. What story will you be keeping your eyes on, or should we be paying attention to here in the last couple of weeks before that final election day?
Oh, geez. I think it's going to have to do a lot with the economy and whether or not there's another stimulus package. There's all sorts of, without getting into the merits of another stimulus package, there's a lot of political winds that will sail one way or the other based on if there's another big round of relief delivered and another round of positive headlines for Trump, because the economy really is his saving grace with voters. And if that continues to fall through, then that's going to really undercut any chance he has of turning this around.
Now, Brad, how can people follow you? It's been great to talk to you here on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci program, and hope we can get you on again. Where can people kind of follow your work and everything that you're writing these days?
Absolutely. On Twitter, it's Brad_Polumbo, Polumbo. And then it's the Breaking Boundaries podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Brad. Have a great day.
Thanks.
You're tuned in to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's been a fantastic morning. Usually you guys would be listening to Joe. He'd have on some of his great guests, or he'd be giving you his take of the day, giving you the weather update, a little bit about some Coastal Carolina news, or maybe UNC Wilmington sports. But you're stuck with me today, and since you're stuck with me, I figured I might as well give you guys a taste of what we normally got cooking here on this station, and that's why I'm very happy to have on my colleague at the Consumer Choice Center, David Clement. We got him linked up via the satellite and everything else from Toronto, Ontario. David, sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me on.
Man, haven't talked to you since last time's Consumer Choice Radio, which is not long ago. But for those of you who don't listen on the weekends to the Big Talker, David and I have a program, Consumer Choice Radio, that airs 10 a.m. Eastern. Replays a couple times as well during the weekend. David and I try to hit up the latest and the greatest in consumer news and issues. Some great interviews. Let's just do some promo here, David.
I was going to say big name guest for this week.
Yeah, tell us all about that. Who's the big person that we had on for the week?
Yeah, so tune in live on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Yaël and I will be interviewing former governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford. Super excited to have him on the program. Highly encourage everybody to dial your radio stations in at 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's going to be great. I mean, for many people, we've been following Mark Sanford for a long time. He's someone who is, big storied career, someone who's incredibly principled. You know, I remember back in, let's say, high school, hearing a little bit about Governor Mark Sanford and kind of what he was doing in his term, and you didn't really realize how principled of a politician he was. And now that he's out of politics, he's still carrying that on, David. So I think a lot of the listeners are going to appreciate hearing from someone who has been in and out of politics. He kind of knows where he belongs now, but he's definitely made a positive impact.
Yeah, definitely carries the banner for fiscal responsibility, which I think with each passing day, that brand of politics is kind of disappearing, and so definitely a refreshing voice.
So let's talk about refreshing voices. Some of you might tune in to listen to the Pope. He's got his own little radio programs. Probably doesn't have high ratings like here on the Mornings of Joe Catenacci show, but he's got his own platforms. The Pope is asked to opine on many issues of the day. He is able to interpret many of the church's teachings to people across the globe, one of the largest religions in the world. And, because of some of his messages, they've been rubbing people the wrong way. And one of the people they've been rubbing the wrong way is David. And David's got an article. This is a head opinion article in the Financial Post newspaper up north. The title here, David Clement, "The Pope Should Back Off on Anti-Capitalism. The idea that global capitalism has failed us is objectively wrong, and so is the caveat that economic gains have been shared unequally." David, why do you got to beef with the Pope, and why you got to bring it to the papers, and what is this all about?
Yeah, so, it isn't necessarily just the Pope. Lots of people hold this view. Lots of people think that globalization is bad, both on the left and right. And so when I heard the Pope say this, I figured, well, what does the data tell us? The data tells us that that's not true. If you look at the last 40 years, global capitalism or neoliberalism, however we want to describe it, has alleviated poverty at a rate which dwarfs the Industrial Revolution, and it even dwarfs our species' domestication of agriculture 10,000 years ago. Never in history have we seen poverty be reduced so rapidly. And that's something that a lot of people forget. In 1980, 40% of the people alive were in extreme poverty. And today, less than 10% of those people, 10% of people alive live in extreme poverty. And so when it comes to poverty, the world is a exponentially less poor place. And I think that that's something worth celebrating.
Yeah, and one thing I would ask about, because many people might not be too familiar with the inner workings of the church, how does it work when it comes to crafting policy and these kind of encyclicals? Is this something that just the Pope, rattles off? Are there committees that discuss this? How does it kind of work? Do we know that this Pope is sort of just going off on his own? Do you think is he part of the Bernie Sanders crowd, or what's this all about?
It's a good question. I think he definitely falls into the liberation theology camp, which is very popular in South America, which is kind of like a blend of progressive politics and Catholic doctrine. I don't think that what he's saying is kind of church decree by any means. I mean, he can, if you're a Catholic and you believe he's the vicar of Christ on earth, or if you're not a Catholic and you don't believe that, he can hold that position and be valid or invalid in that position, while also being wrong about the impact that global capitalism has had on the world, or neoliberalism, which is usually the boogie word that people use to describe the past 30 or 40 years. And so, it certainly isn't church decree or like official church doctrine, but I'd argue that the Pope, just like anybody else, is worthy of scrutiny when it comes to talking about economics.
Yeah, and certainly because much of his word has an influence. I mean, not too much, I would say, in the United States. Maybe you think I would be wrong there. I don't think it'd be the same in Canada, but certainly in Latin America, many different Catholic countries, perhaps this has larger sway, and surely among many individual Catholics. But, we don't talk about religion too much, as it doesn't interact too much with consumer policy, but it is true. Many people are, I guess, driven to many policy decisions or conclusions, sometimes because of religious ideas. That can be positive or negative. David, I don't know if there are other examples that you kind of know where kind of someone's religious background would sort of influence their thinking on specifically politics or regulation. I just don't know too much in the Anglosphere. Maybe I haven't thought about it as much as you have.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one example would be evangelicals and their support for Trump. And so you have a couple prominent evangelical leaders who came out and supported Trump, and many people look up to those leaders, whether rightfully or wrongfully, and kind of viewed that as a signal that Trump was worthy of support in terms of their opinion and their vote. So yeah, I agree with you. It certainly doesn't have much, the Pope doesn't have as significant of sway in, let's say, Canada or the United States, but he certainly does throughout Europe and in Africa and South America. And it's actually most important when we talk about the developing world, because the gains in the developing world since 1980 have been incredible. So if we look at India as an example, so India from 1980 onward, life expectancy has risen 23%. Infant survival at birth has risen 66%. Income per person has risen, and that's inflation adjusted, has risen 487%. Food supply has risen 23%, and mean years of education have risen 166%. And so
those are not rookie numbers; those are good numbers.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street would be, in fact, impressed by those numbers.
I think those are actually pretty good numbers, man.
Yeah. So the thing is that when people talk about capitalism leaving people behind and the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, there isn't a lot of data to support that. And we see that less people as a percentage of the total population live in absolute poverty than any time in human history. And so as much as there's a lot of doom and gloom. I mean, the pandemic, the politics of the day, things aren't quite rosy or positive. But when we do look at some of these figures, there are some encouraging trends, and it's important to realize that, and it's important to celebrate that as well.
keep it in perspective for us. That's David Clement, my colleague at Consumer Choice Center, co-host on Consumer Choice Radio. You can follow David at Clement Liberty here on the Big Talker FM. David, so much of a pleasure for you to be on the program here. I guess I look forward to talking to you again later this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, talk soon. Great talking to my colleague and co-host David Clement. We're hitting the final segment here on Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Stick around. We'll be right back after this. Final hour coming to an end. All right, guys, welcome back. Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski here, guest hosting on the mic, coming to you from around the world. Thanks for tuning in the last couple of hours. It's been 3 hours on the radio, almost 3 hours, guys. We're pulling a Sean Hannity, we're pulling a Rush Limbaugh, hopefully with a better flavor for y'all. Trying to do our best we can here for Joe Catenacci. You can normally hear him, but he'll be back next week, guys. Fret not, worry not. And in the meantime, you can always listen to the Big Talker FM, here on 106.7. If you're listening on the radio, you could be listening online, could be listening in podcast version if you're tuned into Joe's station, or maybe online. So thank you guys so much for the support. I think it's been a pretty fun couple of hours here. I mean, how often you get to talk to a NASCAR driver, someone who's running for political office, someone who's an economist. We've got journalists, we've got activists, podcasters. Really a nice set of guests, people who are kind of phoning in from around the country, around the state, and around the world. I think hopefully you guys learned something. I surely did myself. Not every day you get to talk to these people, hear their insight, and not always do we get to hear that on Wilmington's top radio station. But thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully there'll be a lot more in the next couple of weeks. I know that Joe's cooking up some nice things. He'll have some great stories from the mountains. One of the greatest parts of our state, no doubt. That's something that we heard Matt DiBenedetto, the NASCAR driver, when he was on. That was top of hour 2, talking about just the great parts of North Carolina, the great parts of our state. We're pretty lucky to call this place home. I know for me it's been tough having to go back and forth and leave and come back, but surely do love the old North State. And really heard some great journalism stories there from Ryan Pitkin at Queen City Nerve. We're going to be sure we get all these things wrapped up on Big Talker FM. Do follow me on Twitter at Yaël Oss, YAELOSS. We're going to be publishing this whole show and program out there for the masses. Make sure a lot of people are heard. So do tune in for that. Now let's take a look at the headlines here. There's a couple things that have been popping up. I don't know if you guys have seen the video yet, but it seems as if our good buddy Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, might have gotten caught up with Borat, none other than Sacha Baron Cohen. I saw this trending a bit earlier on Twitter. Looks like our guy, he might have been trying to prosecute some crimes there in Ukraine, but seems as if Borat might have caught him, we'll say red-fisted for the moment, but... yeah, that's definitely going to be popping up. You'll be hearing about that throughout the weekend. But that's sad to see for America's mayor. But hey, is it Giuliani or is it Bill de Blasio? I don't know who America's mayor is anymore. Seems to change every couple years. But regardless, there's plenty of that. And look, this is what the whole thing is about. It's about the last few weeks of the election. Plenty of dirty stuff that's happening on all sides, guys. I know that Joe's been on the program each and every week talking about trying to get people to vote and how easy it has been to vote. There has been early voting available throughout the week, throughout the last few weeks. So hopefully you guys have been able to put in your ballots, or then maybe you'll go vote on Election Day. You don't need to hear me to tell you to do that, but you got plenty of people in your life who are telling you to do that. And probably Facebook is telling you to do that. And Twitter's telling you to do that, and your coworkers are telling you to do that. We're not the show here that's going to tell everybody to go out and vote. You are free to do as you wish, because it is a free country. I think that's what many people love to hear. And yeah, there'll be much more, guys. Let's take a look at the news wires here. Checking up News and Observer, Port City Daily. What do we got here? The the big news in North Carolina continues to be the shutdown. I know you guys have heard about it. You've been affected by it. Some of you might be sitting at home, might have lost your job or been furloughed or put on some kind of extended leave. It's a big deal. There's a lot of people who are looking for alternatives, a lot of people who are looking for jobs online maybe, and that's really what you got to do. You got to use services. One thing I'd recommend, if you're out of work and you have some skills online or maybe can do some kind of data entry or anything else, there are jobs on Upwork, upwork.com. It seems really interesting. You can kind of register there as a freelancer, and there's all kinds of different opportunities available. It's not just writing. There's all kinds of things that you can help out and do, and sometimes it's just filming something, whether it be in downtown Wilmington or wherever you live. Sometimes just helping somebody fill out some emails. There's all kinds of those opportunities, and no doubt the gig economy. Gig economy still exists. That's one thing that myself and my colleagues at the Consumer Choice Center, we're trying to protect for you guys. There's been too much of a push from not just here in the state of North Carolina, but really across the entire country to try to regulate the gig economy. Many U.S. states and cities are trying to clamp down on the amount of commission that some of these apps can use, things like Grubhub, Uber Eats. If you guys have used these, you know everything that I'm talking about. They want to cap the commission because they say the prices are too high. We all know that's baloney. Look, this is a great service that has allowed people to be connected with food and beverages and whatever else they want delivered to their homes, and they've been able to do that in the midst of a pandemic, and that's been great. And the gig economy, that's something that it gives us. It gives us things like Uber and Airbnb, and gives us these great gig economy services. So if you are out on your luck, things aren't looking well for you right now, there are plenty of other opportunities. And I think one thing that I wanted to kind of sum up here in the last parts of the show, we heard from very good and influential people who I think were giving us very positive messages. Matt DiBenedetto, NASCAR driver, he's been having a very good season. He's had to live through the pandemic just like we all have. But then we heard from Mike Munger and everything that's happening in the state of North Carolina and lockdown politics really gets our heads spinning. But I think overall, guys, if you're listening to this program, it means you're informed. It means you've taken time out of your day to try to follow up on the news. You want to see what's happening. So I do commend you for that. There's plenty of that'll be going on. And hopefully we'll try to get you guys more informed, but stay critical, stay skeptical. There's plenty of things out there that people are going to try to get us to click and share. And, that's the greatest thing about this country. And it's something I say on Joe's program a lot. This is a country where we do have, in our Constitution, we do have freedom of speech. Not many other countries in the world can say that. That's why it's important to support radio. It's important to support artists that you like, writers that you like, people whose ideas you agree with. Try to support them if you can. I subscribe to a couple Patreon for a lot of online writers I like. There are a lot of YouTube videos and creators that I like. There's great media out there. Thank you guys for supporting things like talk radio here at the Big Talker. But there's even more that you guys can be doing. And if you are able to do so, I would highly recommend it. Because look, the only way you're really going to be informed is if you actually know that you're getting good information, if you stay skeptical, if you can compare the information, and we practice good media literacy, and we have that good old news diet. And that news diet is important. This is the perfect time to continue practicing that. Don't just agree with a story because you saw it pop up on your Facebook feed. There's plenty out there that might be good, might be bad, but some things that are not really worth a leg to stand on. I think we all have our own stories there. So, guys, there are plenty of communities out there, plenty of groups, whether you be in your car right now, whether you be at work or at home. I know it's a great time. Thank you guys for tuning in. You're all doing great work. You're all surviving. You're contributing to the American project, and it's beautiful. So thank you guys so much for being a part of what we're doing here at the Big Talker. Thank you for contributing to this amazing success story that is the United States of America, or wherever you might be. Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure to be on the radio with you. Again, I'm Yaël Ossowski, guest hosting for Joe. Joe will be back next week. Mornings with Joe Catenacci. That does it for us. A great 3 hours. Thanks so much for sticking up, guys. We'll see you and talk to you soon. Peace.